Hi everyone, welcome to this ICF Core Competencies Update series. Now, over the last several years, since 2019, with a major update of the core competencies, ICF has undergone several surveys, interviews, structured feedback research, and brought together some new updates and exciting updates in 2025. Now, these updates I feel are essential. And what I'm going to do in this series, I'm going to break down very simple, bite sized insights into some of these updates. And subsequently, I'm going to be providing an in-depth video series of each and every one of these core competencies, and we go into each and every sub-competency in greater detail. Now, I'm going to give you first a broad overview, and how I'm going to structure this is I'm going to give you my little insight into some of these competencies, share with you how this can be applied in your coaching skills, and give you a little snapshot, a 5-minute snapshot to each one of these competencies as we go deeper. We begin our exploration with competency number 1 on demonstrates ethical practice. So let's take a look at this. Now, the very first competency on demonstrates ethical practice, the definition of it says this: understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standards of coaching. And I love this very much because this is the bedrock of coaching. Coaching is not just going there and just talking to someone, but there is a bedrock of the Code of Ethics. And ICF calls this the ICF Code of Ethics, which is updated in 2025 as well. And in the Code of Ethics, ICF lays down the standard of practice, the core values. And if you get a chance, I want to encourage you to read the insights and considerations of the different sections of the Code of Ethics, which provides greater detail. And I love that this is the very first foundational competencies, which many coaches unfortunately often skip over because they think that, oh, this is not what I'm going to use today. But I often encourage coaches throughout the entire journey of learning, coaching, practicing, to take time, take a moment to journal, reflect, and also have discussions amongst peers and supervisors, mentors, to discuss what the Code of Ethics is really all about. And you notice in Competency 1, it's not just the Code of Ethics, but demonstrates ethical practice, which means you're not just taking what is written, but you're living it. You're demonstrating it. You're using it in your daily practice, sharing with your clients, sharing with your team members, talking to coaches likewise and your clients as well. And I want to bring all of us to this very interesting insight here. There is a slight update here. And the only big difference is in point number 4, which is subcompetency number 4, where it used to say abides by the ICF Code of Ethics and upholds the core values. And now with the introduction of just this word, ICF Core Values. So it's a minor change. It's not much. But what I want to emphasize is that this brings greater clarity and accuracy. So I appreciate ICF taking time to relook at all the competencies in its manner of phrasing, in its manner of accuracy, in its manner of interpretation. So this provides globally a common bedrock for us to understand where all these competencies and how it evolves through the years. And I like this part where it says abides by the ICF Code of Ethics and upholds the ICF Core Values. And this Code of Ethics is not just for coaches, it's for everyone within the family organization of ICF. That includes sponsors, stakeholders, your clients, so that they're acquainted with what are the scopes and boundaries of coaching or professional coaching. And I'd like to highlight some key important elements here. Now, one of the things when we think about Competency 1 on demonstrates ethical practice is we learn to deepen and use this on daily applications, not just in regular coaching conversations, but it helps us to be better people. We learn to be respectful. We learn to be inclusive. We learn to realize that there's diversity in our workplace, in the society, in communities that we live in, and we want to speak with honor, with respect, and to be inclusive. And that's how we can apply this daily. And also, one of the things that I enjoy in this conversation, especially when technology gets even more advanced, is this idea of confidentiality in every setting. With the increasing emergence of AI technology, you find that a lot of things that is said in the session, sometimes with our heart or with our with our care to want to use technology to enable the coaching process, we inevitably release certain confidential materials online by the help of AI assisted generative summaries and insights, and we don't realize that sometimes these processes actually breach certain confidentiality. So, as coaches, when we get exposed to new technology, consider confidentiality. In the space, whether it's online or in person, think about how do we uphold, how do we create the setting for it. Also, keep the role clarity very, very clear between coach, consulting, therapy, and other forms of support functions. Increasingly, I've heard many coaches trying to blur the lines of, oh, I can do it. I'm a coach of everything. Now, as a coach, we can't do everything. There is a place for coaching. There is also a place for other support functions or other modalities, such as mentoring, facilitation, therapy, and other sorts of support function. And it's important for us to understand those distinctions because those will help our clients effectively. And also to think about when to refer our clients, our people that trust us, our coaches, to other professionals when necessary. You see, as the role of the coach, a lot of coaches have this idea that we are a superman for all our clients. But the reality is that not everything can be done through coaching. Certain interventions require additional assistance from doctors, healthcare professionals, therapists, mentors, supervisors, facilitators, and consultants, counselors, therapists, psychotherapists. And this is where the role of coaching is something very, very important in all the support functions or interventions that will support our clients holistically. And it's important for us to know when the boundaries of coaching requires additional interventions or in other intervention or other modalities to truly support our clients. And when to tell our clients, hey, this is something beyond my scope. And to really support you, I may need to refer you to someone else who is better equipped than I am. So there's something for us to think about in daily application. Now, also to think about this is when a coach is able to understand and facilitate and use this competency well, it's when they're able to clarify the boundaries of coaching versus other roles or modalities at the start. So when we hear clients sharing about what they want, and we begin to realize that, hey, what they want, perhaps it's not coaching. Maybe it goes beyond the scope of coaching, and we're sensing that perhaps they may need other help or other professional support functions, and that's where we need to refer them to the appropriate measure. Or we may need to guide them to help them realize in our chemistry session or discovery session which is the most appropriate help that they need. And also, one of the important thing is the language of inclusivity and avoiding assumptions and stereotypes. So too often, many individual coaches have used different language that they feel it's inclusive, but actually it rejects people. So having a chance to take a step back to review the language that we use in our conversation, in our written form, non-verbal, verbal forms, how are we being inclusive and are we avoiding different assumptions, stereotypes, cultural norms, traditions, generational attitudes? Something to think about as well. Next, think about confidentiality, which I mentioned earlier. So even when it comes under pressure of sponsors, stakeholders, how are we going to uphold those confidentiality? Do we succumb to pressure? Do we succumb to monetary incentive? Do we succumb to different other external forces? Or how do we ensure and demonstrate the ethical practice that we uphold the highest standards of professionalism? Think about also decisions that reflect integrity even when inconvenient. I love this part. So one of the demonstrations of competency number one done well is when we have to make decisions that sometimes seems very inconvenient, sometimes might cause us to cancel a coaching agreement or cease a coaching contract to reflect deeper integrity or to allow the client to choose a more appropriate professional help. And some of these decisions will impact globally the perception of what coaching really is. Now, some examples could be like this. A sponsor asks for the details, and a coach protects client confidentiality and negotiates on what is appropriate. Or kindly refer the client back to the sponsor, or refer the sponsor back to the client to allow both parties to have that intimate conversation of what they require. Another example is when a client shares something traumatic, and that's where a coach responds with care and then refers to therapy without overstepping. Being sensitive to know what is just real in the culture, in the society, also understanding the various governmental political support that is available for the individual within the society or culture or community. Different countries, different cultures, different communities, different professional bodies have different support functions. So do reach out to them. For example, in Singapore, there is a mental health helpline that supports anyone in Singapore when they're faced with some mental health issues or challenges that they face. So when in doubt, I always encourage coaches, find communities, speak to them, speak to professional help, and discuss what is the best care that we can offer our clients. And this is what I often like to share, that ethics is the invisible architecture of trust. It holds the weight of every word we speak. And it's important how we uplift, how we hold it true, and how we communicate this to our clients. Now, most coaches, when they struggle in this competency, is where the boundaries becomes blur, slipping into therapy, advising, mentoring, facilitation, teaching, consulting without clarity or boundaries. And this it's very dangerous. Now, certain times when coaches become blur of boundaries between what they're giving, what they're offering, and what is real, that often creates confusion for the clients because now they're not unsure whether the coach is actually a coach or is coaching, or are they just giving consulting? Are they just providing answers? So blurred boundaries often is one of the common mistakes that I see, or confidentiality leaks. This often happens when the coach mentions client scenarios online, on LinkedIn, on social media. Even if they hide the client's name or blur the client's organization, but the very story itself can reveal the client or the organization. And so it's important. While I understand the excitement that coaches go through wanting to share scenarios online on LinkedIn to position themselves in a certain way. But it's important for us to honor and respect client confidentiality. To me, unless the client is explicitly and even organization has given that go ahead, only in such situations may I just openly share cases from the clients. Otherwise, I would always honor and respect confidentiality. Another one to think about is that oftentimes there's an imposition on values because our personal values and the client's values might be different. And so, what guides the client towards what the coach believes is right, what is right to me may be different from what the client feels is right or what the organization feels is right. And this is something important for us to think about where are we imposing our values on the rightness of things, or are we supporting the clients through the whole process? This is also important for us to think about, which is when facing difficult ethical challenges, are we just ignoring conflict of interest? Are we ignoring sponsors, client, organization, team tension? Or are we honoring those situations and are we clear about how we resolve certain challenging ethical dilemmas? So, for example, a coach tells the client, what you need to do is da 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 da, and instead of exploring the client's perspective. So often, because we feel that we have the right answer, or we feel that our answer is the best, we can help the client the best way, we want to jump in very quickly, but we don't realize that those right moments sometimes becomes not a good moment because we're imposing and guiding clients to what we believe is right rather than supporting the client in their own perspective and own belief. Now, this is something I often say in my classes. I have a whole series of ethical coach where I share this, that a fracture in ethics is rarely loud. It's those quiet crack that blurs the line that breaks trust. And you find that ethics is the bedrock. And once this becomes eroded, or once the boundary becomes blur, trust begins to erode. And when trust is eroded, presence is gone, listening is gone, questions, facilitating learning growth, it's all being affected. So, competency one, bedrock, very important for coaches to relook, restudy, reflect, and spend time deepening the understanding of what it really means to demonstrate ethical practice.